There's going to be another significant milestone, which is to have a suit where you can be in like the vacuum of space with just nothing at all. It's all over the news. Elon Musk reveals a terrifying discovery during spacewalk. But was there even a spacewalk? This is the first time in half a decade that we've had a spacewalk happen without the aid of an airboat. And what exactly did the mission find in the deep of space? Why not join us as we explore the space world, revealing all that you need to know about the most recent and record-holding space exploration, the Polaris Dawn mission, the shattered record. In order to understand Elon's discovery, we have to understand the point of the mission, to break records. So we have to go back to the original record-breaking mission. Back in 1966, on September 4th, the Gemini 11 mission was a huge success. More than anyone else, astronaut Pete Conrad, the commander of NASA's Gemini 11 mission, was the most enthusiastic of all. He mentioned that the experience was the biggest thrill of his life. And of course, that's understandable. The United States is a nation of explorers. It's something that fundamentally appeals to our psyche. What do you expect from a person who climbed to a record orbital altitude of 853 miles? 33 years later, the world said goodbye to Conrad, but his altitude record would stand for another 25 years. And now, Conrad's record has just been shattered. Immediately, Falcon 9 launched the Crew Dragon spacecraft into an elliptic orbit. It stayed in an orbit of 1,200 kilometers. But Dragon had other plans. It raised its orbit later in the first day of the mission to an apogee of 1,480.1 kilometers. At this point, it was confirmed that the Polaris Dawn mission broke the record of the highest altitude on a crewed Earth orbital mission and the highest altitude by any crewed mission since the Apollo 17 mission to the Moon in 1972. However, after about 6 orbits, Dragon lowered itself to about 720 kilometers to accomplish other objectives of the mission. Over Australia, the command pilot executed his terminal phase maneuver, burning at 141 feet per second. The spacewalk. During the mission, something controversial happened. A spacewalk. Except, it wasn't really even a walk at all. The spacewalk was important to the mission because experts believe that someday, humans would need another planet to live on. To safely transport humans to this new planet, it is crucial to understand the conditions of the space, hence the need for a spacewalk. However, this particular action has led to controversies after the mission crew broadcasted their activities live from space. In a video from the Polaris Dawn mission, it shows the commander in charge outside the hatch, but he didn't completely leave or walk in space. However, a spacewalk, also known as an extravehicular activity, or EVA for short, is a period of activity an astronaut spends outside a spacecraft. This explanation doesn't sound like they necessarily have to walk around space, since they can't be totally detached from the craft. I mean, how are they going to walk in the middle of space anyway? There's no surface for them to put their feet on. To get clarity, let's look at an example of another spacewalk. The first spacewalk was carried out on March 18, 1965. That day, Soviet cosmonaut Alexei Leonov did a spacewalk at the height of the space race. The space race was a 20th century competition between the US and the USSR over who could conquer space exploration first. In the end, Leonov's walk lasted 10 minutes. Of course, Leonov was completely out, but it doesn't change the fact that both spent time out of their hatch. Today, spacewalks have taken a different level. They are usually done outside the International Space Station and can last between 5 and 8 hours. On top of that, they are not done just for the sake of doing, but for several important reasons. These include carrying out scientific research, observing how space environments impact different things and humans, testing and repairing equipment, and more. While spacewalk sounds like just taking a walk in the park, it is much more difficult. This is because of the difference in environment, which is why astronauts need spacesuits and rope-like tethers for safety. This equipment keeps the astronauts from floating away into space, thereby ensuring their safety. One other way to ensure safety is to wear a simplified aid for EVA rescue known as SAFER for short. It is that tool that looks like a backpack but is far from your regular backpack. It consists of small jet thrusters to help an astronaut move around in space and is controlled by a small joystick. Astronauts all over the world may just have to say goodbye to carrying excessive loads with them to space. This is because technology is fast rising, and scientists have not stopped engaging in game-changing space explorations like the Polaris Dawn mission. On this mission, the spacewalk was scheduled to happen on the third day. When it was time for the spacewalk, all crew members put on their spacesuits and then let out every air in the capsule. It was a risky operation, but in the end, they were able to achieve the goal of the mission and proceeded with other experiments they had to perform. The Polaris Dawn mission. This mission, like many others before it, comes in a series and with even a terrifying discovery that will soon be revealed. The Polaris Dawn mission is the first of 3 testing and development missions under the Polaris program. It was not a sole mission, but jointly executed by Jared Isaacman and Elon Musk's SpaceX. First non-professional astronaut to walk in space in partnership with Elon Musk's SpaceX. The mission's aim is to develop new technologies to help bring people to Mars, which has been one of Elon's main goals with SpaceX. Initially, the launch into space was scheduled for August 28 this year. However, it was delayed due to a helium leak. But even after the helium issue was resolved, the launch was further postponed due to bad weather around Florida. Eventually, the launch was set to happen on September 10, 2024, and here's the plan. The crew are expected to travel in SpaceX's Dragon capsule and aim for a height that no one has ever reached. Reaching this height only means that the Polaris Dawn mission will be well into the inner band of the Van Allen radiation belts. These are the highly radioactive regions in space that encircle the Earth, and they begin at around 1,000 kilometers altitude. After the record was achieved, the capsule dropped to a lower orbit for the rest of the mission. Of the 4 crew members, only 2 of them left the capsule for the spacewalk. The remaining 2, however, remained in the capsule to manage the safety tethers and observe readings to ensure that everything went well. Apart from beating a record and walking the space, it's the first all-civilian team to complete a spacewalk. Another aim of the mission is to test spacesuits. The suits were developed by SpaceX for this mission and future ones. They are equipped with cameras and heads-up features that show the astronauts what's up with their suits outside their vehicle. For more context, the International Space Station has an airlock that allows the overall outpost to remain pressurized when astronauts venture out into space, while Dragon has just a hatch that opens up to space. This means that the SpaceX suits must be able to function well in such conditions to allow for exploring other parts of space in the future. Once the astronauts are done spacewalking, the hatch will be closed and the capsule will be depressurized. Still, on the mission, the crew will conduct about 40 scientific experiments, which include obtaining X-ray images without using an X-ray machine. All that they planned to use was natural showers of radiation in space. The mission also aimed to test drive a device that can collect and integrate measurements of health, including blood pressure, heart rate, respiration rate, and temperature. The same technology also provides ultrasound imaging and larynx and throat-focused video camera capabilities. It also includes an experimental telemedicine feature that can help diagnose crew members in near real time. The scary thing to be watching people, and the risk is never zero. The plan was to test this technology by comparing vital sign collection from the device with data gathered from standard periodic health status exams. That's not all. The technology's telemedicine feature will be using SpaceX's Starlink communication system to connect with doctors and specialists on Earth. And this will also lead to a communication test using Starlink. During the test, the device will attempt to offer an appropriate diagnosis based on crew inputs and available documentation. Over the years, one thing that has been common with humans traveling to space is motion sickness. This is why this mission also aims to understand and prevent the motion sickness experienced by many astronauts in space. The crew members are to describe their symptoms, talk about their interventions, how to stop them. One path is we stay on Earth forever, and then there will be some eventual extinction event, and if their approach ever helped. Apart from the above mentioned, the crew members are also to participate in different health studies on behalf of the NASA-funded Translational Research Institute for Health, called TRISH. The aim is to set a new baseline for collecting standard health data on commercial space flights. This will complement the datasets routinely collected from NASA astronauts and missions. They are to provide data about how spaceflight affects mental health as well as physical health. This will be achieved through different medical tests and scans to be completed before, after and during the mission. The test will include the assessment of behavior, sleep, bone density, eye health, and cognitive function. In addition, it will capture the analysis of blood, urine, and respiration. Before now, space communication has relied on signals from ground infrastructure, but SpaceX's Starlink satellite network promises laser-based communication. This will allow for smooth communication between humans in space and humans on Earth. This communication will also be tested to know if it works just fine. And once they are back on Earth, the crew members will be surveyed to determine whether they experienced any injuries or discomfort. Now, the mission, which started on September 10th, has been concluded, bringing back to Earth a lot of amazing discoveries. This is a crucial step, getting people